Chosen one, listen carefully. What if the greatest preparation for your destiny was never meant to be loud? What if the moments shaping you were never meant to be celebrated, never meant to be seen? Think about it. What if the most important trials of your life were hidden inside ordinary days, inside quiet disappointments, inside moments so small that no one else even noticed they were happening? You felt them, though. You felt the weight of them, because divine authority is never handed to the untested. Never. Before the crown ever touches your head, something else must happen first. Purification. Before influence arrives, isolation appears. Before power is trusted to you, refinement begins. This is the part most people never understand. They think destiny arrives through opportunity, but destiny actually arrives through testing. And most people fail those tests, not because they are weak, but because they never realize they are being tested at all. They complain about the delay. They resent the silence. They walk away during the preparation. But you kept walking, even when the road became quiet, even when the room became empty, even when nothing around you seemed to move. And that is why you are here, because the purification process has already started in your life. Throughout history, those marked for greater spiritual authority were never prepared through comfort. They were shaped through invisible trials, moments when their patience was examined, moments when their loyalty was proven, moments when their character was refined while no one was watching. These tests rarely look dramatic. They rarely look spiritual. Most of the time, they look frustrating. They look like delays. They look like misunderstandings. They look like seasons where your progress feels completely invisible. But understand this: every one of those moments is a filter, a divine separation process. It separates those who simply want influence from those who can actually carry it. Because authority without purification becomes destruction, and heaven does not place crowns on untested heads. That is why there are 9 hidden tests, 9 quiet examinations woven into the path of every chosen one, tests that reveal whether you are truly ready for divine reign. And if you recognize these tests in your life, it means something powerful. You are not being rejected. You are being prepared. First, the test of silence. This is one of the earliest purifications a chosen one encounters, and it confuses many people. Because when you first begin to awaken, something changes inside you. Your perception sharpens. Your discernment grows. You start noticing patterns others ignore. You start seeing truth others refuse to see. You speak with clarity. But strangely, no one seems to hear you. Have you experienced this? You share an insight, and the room goes quiet. You offer wisdom, and it gets dismissed. You explain something clearly, and people look at you like you are speaking another language. At first, it feels frustrating, even painful, because part of you wonders, why can't they see what I see? But listen carefully. This silence is not rejection, it is purification. The silence is testing your foundation. Because if your purpose depends on recognition, it will never survive destiny. True authority cannot be built on applause. It must be built on conviction. Heaven must know that your voice does not depend on validation, that your truth does not depend on acceptance, that your mission does not depend on people agreeing with you. So what happens? You speak truth, and it echoes back in silence. You plant wisdom, and no one seems to notice. And sometimes, the same idea you shared gets repeated by someone else later. Suddenly, everyone listens. Suddenly, everyone agrees. Have you seen that happen? Of course you have. But the real test was never about who received credit. The test was about you. Would you still stand in truth? Even if no one clapped, would you still speak with clarity? Even if no one understood, would you still carry the message? Even if the room stayed silent, because chosen ones are not trained through applause. They are trained through resistance. And if you survived the silence, if you kept speaking truth even when no one responded, then understand what that means. Your voice is being prepared for a greater moment. Second, the test of delay. This is where many people grow weary. This is where many turn back. Because nothing wounds the human heart like waiting for what you know was promised. You saw the door. You felt the stirring. You knew something was near. And then what happened? The door almost opened, then closed. The opportunity came close, then disappeared. The breakthrough looked one step away, then everything slowed down. Have you lived in that tension? Have you stood in that painful space where you know you are called, yet your life refuses to move at the speed of your vision? Listen carefully. Delay is not denial. Delay is purification. It is one of the deepest hidden tests because it exposes what is really driving you. It reveals whether you want destiny or whether you only wanted quick results. That is why the process becomes slow. That is why heaven allows the waiting, because ambition must be cleansed before authority can be trusted. Impatience cannot carry divine reign. A restless spirit will rush what God is still refining. A hungry ego will force doors that were never meant to open yet. So the delay comes, and it burns. It burns your timeline. It burns your pride. It burns the version of you that thought purpose would arrive quickly, cleanly, and without resistance. But chosen one, this is where your strength is forged. Not in instant reward, not in visible momentum. In waiting, in trusting when nothing moves, in standing firm when the enemy whispers nothing is happening. That whisper is warfare, because darkness wants you to misread the delay. The enemy wants you to call preparation failure. He wants you to become bitter. He wants you to force what should be entrusted. He wants you to abandon your assignment right before the appointed time, but you must see clearly. When the pace slows, it does not mean favor has left you. It means heaven is protecting what your future requires. Have you ever noticed how some things in your life felt certain yet refused to happen on your schedule? A career path, a ministry burden, a creative vision, a calling you could feel in your spirit. You were ready to run, but everything around you seemed to drag. People stalled, resources stalled, answers stalled, and all you could hear was silence between one season and the next. Yet later, much later, you saw the truth. If that door had opened when you wanted it to, you would have entered too early, too wounded, too unsteady, too unprepared for the warfare attached to the blessing. That is the revelation. The delay was not working against you. It was working for you. It was shielding your anointing from premature exposure. It was guarding your destiny from the weight you were not yet built to carry. And only the chosen understand this. Only the chosen can be delayed and still believe, still pray, still prepare, still remain faithful while the world mocks the waiting. So do not curse this season. Do not despise the slowness. Do not measure divine movement by human speed. What is taking longer is becoming stronger. What is moving slower is being built deeper. And what heaven delays, heaven also prepares. Remember this, a rushed crown crushes the head that wears it, but a prepared soul can carry the weight of reign. So if your life has been marked by holy delays, do not panic. You are not forgotten. You are being timed by God, and when the moment opens, nothing in darkness will be able to shut it. Third, the test of isolation. This one cuts deep because it does not always arrive through conflict. It often arrives through distance, through silence, through a slow fading. People you once laughed with no longer feel the same. Places that once felt familiar now feel empty. Conversations that once held your attention now feel hollow, thin, and strangely heavy. Have you noticed that? Have you felt the room change around you? Have you felt your spirit pull back from circles you once tried so hard to belong to? Listen carefully, this is not an accident, and it is not punishment. It is refinement. It is one of the quietest tests because it touches the part of you that still longs to be understood, included, and surrounded. But chosen one, not every connection was meant to follow you into your next season. Some relationships were only assigned to an earlier version of you, a version that was still discovering, still shrinking, still trying to fit into spaces that could never hold your calling. But now something has changed. Your spirit has changed. Your discernment has sharpened. Your hunger has shifted. And what once entertained you now exhausts you. What once comforted you now unsettles you. What once felt like home now feels like a place you have outgrown. Do not ignore this. When heaven begins separating you, it is never random. It is protection. It is alignment. Because the wrong environment can suffocate the right anointing. The wrong voices can drain your clarity. The wrong circle can make you question what God has already spoken over your life. That is why isolation comes. Not to crush you, to uncover you, to strip away every false attachment, to break your addiction to approval, to teach you who you are when nobody is affirming you. This is where identity gets built, not in the crowd, in the quiet, not in constant companionship, in holy separation. And yes, it hurts. It hurts when friendships fade without explanation. It hurts when people stop understanding you. It hurts when familiar bonds dissolve and you cannot force the connection back. But hear this truth. The pain of isolation is often the sound of spiritual realignment. You are not being abandoned. You are being repositioned. The world calls it loneliness. Heaven calls it consecration. The world thinks you are losing people, but in the spirit you are losing interference. Only the chosen recognize this, because only the chosen know what it is to sit in a room full of people and still feel set apart. Only the chosen know what it is to be loved by many, yet understood by few. Only the chosen know the ache of outgrowing environments that once defined them. So if old circles feel distant, stop begging dead connections to breathe again. If conversations feel shallow, stop forcing your spirit to feed on what no longer nourishes you. If the room has become empty, do not fear the emptiness. God empties rooms before he fills them with purpose. Remember this. Isolation is not evidence that something is wrong with you. It is evidence that something is changing in you. Darkness wants you to interpret separation as rejection. The enemy wants you to panic. He wants you to crawl back into spaces God already called you out of. But stand firm. Do not return to what was comfortable just because what is holy feels lonely. This season is teaching you to carry your identity without a crowd, to hear God without noise, to stand in truth without reinforcement. And once you learn that no room will ever have the power to define you again. Fourth, the test of misunderstanding. This is where the distance between you and the world becomes impossible to ignore, because something in you has changed. You do not think like you used to think. You do not move like you used to move. You do not agree with things the way everyone expects you to agree. You start seeing patterns others miss. You start questioning systems others obey without thought. You start feeling uneasy in places where everyone else feels comfortable. And what happens next? People misunderstand you. They call you difficult. They call you extreme. They call you strange, intense, or different. Have you heard those words before? Have you felt that pressure, that invisible pressure to shrink your vision, soften your voice, and dull your convictions, just so others can feel comfortable around you? Listen carefully. This test is not about them. It is about you. Misunderstanding is one of the sharpest forms of purification because it attacks the ego's need to be accepted. It exposes whether you are committed to truth or addicted to fitting in. Because if being misunderstood breaks you, the world will train you to betray yourself. It will teach you to edit your spirit, to dilute your message, to hide your discernment, to smile in places where your soul is already grieving. But chosen one, that is not your assignment. You were never called to blend into darkness. You were called to expose it. You were never sent to echo the crowd. You were sent to hear what heaven is saying before the crowd can recognize it. And that kind of sight always creates tension. Not everyone will understand your hunger. Not everyone will understand your boundaries. Not everyone will understand why certain conversations now feel empty to you, why certain ambitions no longer impress you, why certain patterns disturb you when others call them normal. But remember this, normal is not your calling. Clarity is, consecration is, vision is. The world often mocks what it cannot yet interpret, and people often resist what reveals how asleep they have become. So when they label you too much, do not panic. When they say you have changed, do not apologize. When they misunderstand your distance, your standards, your conviction, do not rush to explain what heaven is still unfolding. Only the chosen recognize this. Difference is often the first evidence of vision. What makes you hard to understand is often the very thing marking you for destiny. Because divine leaders walk roads that others cannot name yet. They carry burdens others cannot feel yet. They speak truths others are not ready to hear yet. That is why misunderstanding follows calling. Light has never been fully understood by those committed to darkness. And favor has never been welcomed by those who worship comfort. So if people misread you in this season, let them. If they reduce you because they cannot discern you, let them. Do not trade revelation for approval. Do not trade conviction for comfort. Do not betray what God showed you just because the room lacks spiritual vision. The enemy wants your need to be understood to become a leash. He wants you explaining yourself until you forget yourself. He wants you craving acceptance so badly that you abandon the edge of your assignment. Break that need. Stand firm. You do not need everyone to understand you when God is the one leading you. And the moment you stop needing permission to be who you are called to be, your purification deepens. Your authority sharpens. Your path separates even more clearly from the world's path. Fifth, the test of invisible progress. This is where the purification becomes deeply personal, because now the battle is no longer only around you. It is within you. You are growing. You know you are. You are thinking differently, praying differently, responding differently. Your discipline is stronger. Your discernment is sharper. Your spirit is not where it used to be. And yet, when you look at your life on the outside, it can feel like nothing has changed. No visible reward, no sudden breakthrough, no dramatic evidence, just quiet effort, quiet obedience, quiet transformation. Have you ever felt that frustration? Have you ever looked at your life and thought, I know I am not the same person? So why does everything around me still look the same? Listen carefully. This test is sacred because invisible progress is how heaven trains real discipline. Anyone can keep moving when results are obvious. Anyone can stay committed when rewards come quickly. But can you keep growing when nobody sees it? Can you stay faithful when there is no applause, no spotlight, no external proof that your effort is working? That is the test. Because divine reign cannot be entrusted to people who only move when they are being rewarded. You are being trained to build from within, to strengthen what cannot be photographed, to establish what cannot be celebrated yet. This is how true transformation happens. Not first in public, in private, not first in outcomes, in identity. The world worships visible success, but heaven watches hidden formation. The world claps for the finished building, but God studies the unseen foundation, and chosen one. That is why your progress has felt buried, because what is beneath the surface matters more than what is seen above it. Think about your own life. You have been studying, learning, changing your habits, breaking old cycles, strengthening your mind, sharpening your spirit. You have been saying no to what once controlled you. You have been surviving battles that would have crushed an earlier version of yourself. And still the outer landscape has not caught up. The door has not opened yet. The recognition has not arrived yet. The environment still looks unchanged. But do not be deceived by appearances. Roots grow in silence. Foundations are laid underground. And the strongest things God builds often look invisible before they become undeniable. Only the chosen recognize this. Only the chosen can endure seasons where progress is real but hidden. Only the chosen can keep building while nothing around them appears to respond. That is power. That is maturity. That is preparation. The enemy wants you to despise slow formation. He wants you to judge your life by what is immediately visible. He wants you to abandon the process because the evidence is not public yet. But darkness always misreads hidden growth. The enemy cannot stop what he cannot fully see. And what heaven is forming in you right now is deeper than emotion, deeper than motivation, deeper than performance. It is structure, it is endurance, it is spiritual weight. So do not insult the season by calling it empty. It is not empty. It is loaded. It is building your capacity. It is teaching you to trust God without constant proof. It is preparing you to carry what shallow people could never sustain. Remember this. When transformation is real, it begins inside before it appears outside. So if your life feels quiet but your spirit is getting stronger, rejoice. If your world looks unchanged but your soul is becoming unshakable, rejoice. Because that means the work is working, and when what is hidden finally breaks the surface, it will not be fragile. It will be established. Sixth, the test of temptation. This is where the purification becomes dangerous, because temptation does not always arrive looking evil. It often arrives looking useful, helpful, timely. It shows up like an answer, like relief, like the faster route to the thing you have been praying for. Have you noticed that? Have you seen how the moment you grow tired, the shortcut appears? The easier deal, the easier compromise, the easier connection, the easier way to gain influence without the weight of full obedience? Listen carefully. This is not random. This is a test of loyalty. Because once heaven sees that you can carry power, darkness immediately tries to buy your agreement. The enemy knows something about you. He knows your life is not small. He knows your assignment is not ordinary. He knows your anointing carries consequence. That is why temptation comes with timing. Not when you are careless, when you are close, when you are pressing through, when you are tired enough to justify compromise. That is when the false door appears, and it always whispers the same lie. You can have it now. But chosen one, anything that asks you to betray your integrity to reach your destiny is not a blessing. It is bait. Anything that requires you to dilute your truth, abandon your values, or silence your spirit for the sake of quick advancement is not favor. It is warfare. This is why temptation is so revealing. It exposes what you truly love, not what you say you love, what you will protect under pressure. Do you love the promise more than the one who gave it? Do you love visibility more than alignment? Do you love arrival more than purity? That is the real question, because those marked for higher influence must prove they cannot be purchased by convenience. You cannot rule in light if darkness can rent your loyalty. You cannot carry divine reign if shortcuts still excite you more than obedience. And yes, the offer can look convincing. An easier path, a quicker promotion, a relationship that opens doors but pollutes your spirit, an opportunity that looks impressive but quietly asks you to become someone you were never called to be. From the outside, it looks like progress, but in the spirit, it is contamination. Do not ignore this. The test is not about the opportunity. The test is about alignment. Will you stay true when compromise could speed everything up? Will you walk away when your flesh wants to say yes? Will you trust God enough to reject what glitters but is not pure? Only the chosen recognize this, because only the chosen understand that not every open door came from God. Some doors open to distract, some doors open to corrupt, some doors open because the enemy is terrified you are one season away from stepping into unshakable authority. So he sends convenience, he sends counterfeit favor, he sends an imitation crown, but stand firm. You do not need a shortcut when your steps are ordered. You do not need a crooked path to reach a holy destination. Remember this: every temptation you resist increases your spiritual weight. Every compromise you reject strengthens your authority. Every false door you refuse proves that your soul cannot be bought. And that is why this test matters so deeply. Because heaven is not only preparing you to receive, heaven is preparing you to remain clean when receiving becomes possible. So when the shortcut appears, do not be impressed. Discern it. When compromise smiles at you, do not entertain it. Expose it. Your destiny is too sacred to be traded for speed. Seventh, the test of emotional control. This is where many chosen ones finally understand something that changes everything. Not every battle in your life came to destroy you. Some battles came to reveal you. Some moments were allowed to rise around you just to show you what still ruled within you. Have you noticed the pattern? Just when you are growing, someone pushes you. Just when you are healing, someone provokes you. Just when you are regaining peace, a voice, a situation, a betrayal, or an unfair moment tries to pull you back into reaction. It happens suddenly: a disrespectful comment, a public insult, a false accusation, a boundary crossed, a circumstance so unfair that your whole body wants to answer it immediately. And in that moment, it feels personal, it feels offensive, it feels unbearable. But listen carefully. There is more happening than emotion. There is testing. Because authority without emotional discipline becomes destruction. Power in the hands of an unruled spirit is dangerous. Influence carried by an easily provoked soul becomes chaos. And heaven will never hand you greater weight if smaller pressures can still control your mouth, your peace, and your decisions. Do you understand what that means? Some of the people who provoked you were not just obstacles. They were mirrors. Some of the situations that angered you were not just interruptions. They were exposures. They revealed where pain still had access, where pride still reacted, where woundedness still wanted the final word. This is not condemnation. This is purification. Because divine preparation often includes moments designed to provoke reaction, just to see whether you will answer with impulse or with wisdom. The world reacts. The chosen respond. The world is ruled by feeling. The chosen are trained to rule feeling. That is the contrast. That is the separation. Not everyone will understand this. Some people think power is loud. Power is not loud. Power is governed. Power is restraint. Power is having the ability to strike back and still choosing alignment. Have you ever held your peace when everything in you wanted to defend yourself? Have you ever stayed composed while someone tried to reduce you? Have you ever walked away from a fight not because you were weak, but because you knew your calling was too sacred to be dragged into foolishness? That was not passivity. That was growth. That was evidence. That was spiritual control being formed inside you. And yes, the enemy hates this. Because darkness feeds on reaction. The enemy wants your anger to speak before your wisdom can rise. He wants one impulsive moment to damage what years of preparation were building. He wants you to mistake emotional release for strength. But remember this, losing control is not power. Mastering yourself is. Every time you remain composed under pressure, your authority deepens. Every time you choose wisdom over impulse, your spirit grows stronger. Every time you refuse to let unfairness govern you, you prove that your life is being ruled by something higher than emotion. Only the chosen recognize this, because only the chosen know how often warfare comes disguised as irritation, how often destiny is tested through offense, how often greatness is measured in the moments nobody sees when your reaction could have cost you everything. So do not despise these provoking moments. Study them, learn from them. Let them show you where heaven is still strengthening you, because the goal is not to feel nothing. The goal is to be ruled by nothing but God. And when your emotions no longer own you, when offense no longer commands you, when provocation no longer pulls you off assignment, something powerful happens. You become dangerous to darkness. Eighth, the test of faith without evidence. This is one of the deepest places a chosen one will ever walk. Because by this point, you have already endured silence. You have already endured delay. You have already endured separation, misunderstanding, hidden growth, temptation, and pressure. And now the path becomes even more severe. Now the evidence disappears. Now the confirmation grows quiet. Now the road ahead no longer explains itself. Have you ever been there? Have you ever reached a place where you knew you were still called, but you could no longer see where the calling was leading? No sign, no visible proof, no reassuring outcome, just a deep quiet knowing inside you that refused to let you stop. This is not weakness. This is not confusion for confusion's sake. This is purification at its deepest level, because belief is easy when results are visible. Anyone can trust when the signs are obvious. Anyone can move when the next step is clearly lit. But can you keep walking when clarity disappears? Can you keep obeying when nothing outside of you confirms that you are on the right path? Can you keep building when the world sees no evidence? That is the test. Because faith without evidence purifies your motives in a way comfort never could. It separates emotional excitement from real conviction. It reveals whether your trust was built on outcomes or on God. And this is why the pressure increases here. Because darkness always attacks hardest when your inner certainty becomes stronger than external proof. The enemy does not fear a person who only believes when life makes sense. He fears the one who keeps moving when all visible evidence has vanished. He fears the one who still prays in silence, still prepares in obscurity, still obeys in uncertainty, still moves forward with no applause, no validation, and no visible result. That kind of faith is dangerous to darkness. Have you noticed how people begin to question you in seasons like this? Friends do not understand. Family starts doubting. Voices around you ask, why are you still doing this? Why are you still believing? Why are you still holding on when nothing is changing? But they cannot hear what you hear. They cannot feel what you feel. Not everyone will understand this. Only the chosen recognize this. Because only the chosen know what it means to be carried by an inner command that cannot be explained by logic. Only the chosen know what it means to continue when all natural reassurance has dried up. And that is why this test matters so much. It proves that your assignment is no longer dependent on comfort. It proves that your destiny is no longer anchored to public evidence. It proves that your spirit has learned to follow the voice of God deeper than the noise of the world. So do not mistake the absence of proof for the absence of favor. Do not mistake unclear terrain for a lost calling. Do not let temporary invisibility make you question eternal purpose. Remember this: when God removes visible evidence, He is often strengthening invisible certainty. When the road goes dark, it is not always because you are lost. Sometimes it is because your faith is being taught to see without sight. And when you survive this kind of testing, something irreversible happens. You stop needing constant reassurance. You stop needing signs every moment. You stop living by what you can measure, and you begin to move with a holy steadiness that terrifies the enemy. Because now your obedience cannot be controlled by appearances. Now your confidence cannot be manipulated by delay. Now your soul has become anchored beyond the visible world. Ninth, the test of power in waiting. This is the final purification, the deepest one, the most dangerous one, because by now you have changed. You can feel it. You can sense what is growing in you. Your discernment is sharper. Your presence is heavier. Your wisdom is deeper. Your spirit no longer reacts the way it once did. And with that change comes a new awareness. You begin to realize that there is power on your life. Real power, influence, clarity, leadership, anointing. You start seeing what others miss. You start recognizing solutions before others even identify the problem. You can feel that you were not made to stay small, and yet you are still told to wait. Have you felt that tension? Have you ever wondered why, just as you became aware of what you carry, the world still did not move on your timing? That is because this is the ultimate test. Not whether you have power, whether you can hold power without rushing to display it, whether you can carry authority without demanding recognition, whether you can know who you are without forcing the room to acknowledge it. Listen carefully. Premature authority destroys people. A crown placed on an unready soul becomes a burden, not a blessing. That is why heaven watches how you handle hidden strength. Can you stay humble while feeling the weight of your calling? Can you remain submitted while knowing you were born to lead? Can you keep serving, keep learning, keep waiting, even when something inside you knows your season is close? This is what separates the chosen from the ambitious. The world wants to be seen. The chosen are willing to be prepared. The world rushes to announce itself. The chosen let God reveal them. Only the chosen recognize this, because only the chosen know what it means to feel greatness rising in silence, to feel power building in private, to know you could step forward, but still obey the timing of God. That is not weakness. That is mastery. That is proof. That is divine restraint, and darkness fears that kind of person. The enemy is not only afraid of your gift, he is afraid of your discipline, afraid that you will learn how to carry power cleanly, afraid that you will enter your hour without ego, without noise, without corruption. And when that happens, hell cannot manipulate you. So if you have felt the weight of waiting, even while sensing the strength within you, do not become restless. Do not force the moment. Do not announce what God is still maturing. What is real does not need to beg to be seen. It will be revealed in its appointed hour. Chosen one, hear this with your spirit. This quiet purification was never sent to crush you. It was sent to consecrate you. Every delay, every wound, every misunderstanding, every isolated season, every unseen battle. None of it was proof that you were abandoned. It was proof that you were being refined. Because divine rule is not built in a day. It is forged in silence, forged in discipline, forged in the hidden places where character is tested and identity is sealed. So if these 9 hidden tests spoke to your spirit, comment 9 below. Let the remnant know you recognize the process. And if you are still standing after the silence, the waiting, the warfare, and the loneliness, then never forget this. You are not just enduring the road. You are being shaped to carry it. Subscribe, stay close, and keep walking with this channel. Because your preparation is not ending in pain. It is ending in rain.